Hi, I'm the adopted one they only remember when the bill arrives. At dinner last week, my brother stood up and yelled across the table, "There's no seat for you here. You're just the dirty family secret." Everyone laughed. Then handed me the 4,500 check. I didn't argue. I just smiled, took a sip of water, and pulled out my card. But right before the waiter took it, my grandfather, the man who raised me like a shadow, slowly stood up and said 5 words that changed everything. "Stop right now. He's mine." That's when I realized I was never the outsider. I was the threat they tried to bury. It was already dark when I pulled into the valet line outside Voss and Ember, one of those restaurants with soft jazz and too much glass, the kind of place where silence costs more than food. I checked my watch, 7:12, late, but not by much. The invitation said celebrating Calder's success. No one had specified what kind of success that was. I fixed my tie, wiped my palms, and reminded myself that tonight I would just be polite, nothing more. Inside, the light was golden and heavy. Waiters moved like clockwork, and every table seemed to hum with quiet wealth. The hostess guided me toward the private room in the back. I could already hear laughter, Calder's laughter, sharp, polished, performative. When I stepped through the door, the room stilled for half a second, then resumed its rhythm. My brother looked up from the center seat, that permanent grin carved across his face. "Didn't think you'd show up," he said, leaning back. "There's no seat for you here, anyway." A burst of laughter followed, too loud, too rehearsed. Even Mother smiled, covering it with a sip of her wine. The others, cousins, in-laws, hangers-on, laughed because that's what people do when the golden sun makes a joke. I scanned the long table. Every place had a printed name tag, gold letters on black. Calder, Marjorie, Vince. Even the family lawyer, Mr. Hart, had one. Mine was missing. The waiter, caught halfway between service and panic, looked at me for direction. "Should I, bring another chair, sir?" Before I could answer, Calder waved his hand dismissively. "Don't bother. He likes standing. Makes him feel useful." More laughter. I smiled because that's what you do when you've been taught politeness can hide anything. "I'll stand then," I said. My voice came out even. That steadiness, it's something I inherited from years of being the quiet one. Marjorie's tone sliced through the noise. "Calder, let him sit. Let's not ruin the evening." The way she said it wasn't kindness, it was control, like she was telling a child to stop playing with the help. A waiter hurried to fetch a spare chair from the wall and slipped it into place. As I sat, I noticed an extra silver spoon by my plate, resting slightly off-center. Every other utensil had a tiny engraved name. Mine did not. Calder noticed too. Well, even he gets a silver spoon tonight. The table erupted again. Someone muttered, "Guess some habits die hard." I looked at the spoon. Its surface caught the chandelier light and threw it back at me, fractured. "It's funny," I said almost to myself, "how you can polish something borrowed and it still never really shines the same." A few heads turned. Calder smirked. He didn't understand the sentence, but he knew it wasn't meant as a compliment. The conversation shifted to his company's merger, to stocks, to vacations in Tuscany. I nodded when spoken to, smiled when expected. It's a dance I've known for decades. Dinner stretched on. The waiters floated in and out with plates that looked more like art projects than meals. I tasted almost nothing. At some point, Mother leaned closer. "You've been quiet, Rowan. Are you still doing... what was it again?" Her voice carried the same curiosity people use when they ask about a pet they forgot you owned. Consulting, I said. Still running my firm out of Denver. Calder snorted. Consulting? That's adorable. You see, some of us actually build things, brother. I didn't respond. The laughter came again, duller this time. Then came the moment that would replay in my head for weeks after. Calder raised his glass, stood, and clinked it with a knife. All right, everyone, a toast to family, and to our generous brother who's covering tonight's little celebration. Applause, whistles, laughter. I blinked. Excuse me? He smiled. Come on, Rowan. You've done well for yourself, right? $4,500. Nothing for a big man like you. Marjorie said nothing. No one did. Just nods of agreement disguised as humor. I looked around. Every eye was on me, waiting for my reaction like it was part of the entertainment. Sure, I said finally, if it makes the night smoother. I reached into my jacket, pulled out my card, and handed it to the waiter. My hand didn't shake. Not yet. The waiter hesitated, eyes darting to Calder. Go ahead, I said quietly. Let's not keep them waiting. He took the card, stepping back. The chatter resumed, lighter now that the discomfort had been transferred. I could feel every second stretch longer than it should. The sound of silverware against porcelain, the faint hum of the restaurant beyond the door, my heartbeat syncing with the clinking glasses. It all merged into one endless tone. I wondered briefly if they even realized what they'd done, or if this was just another game they'd been playing so long, they no longer knew the rules were cruel. The waiter hadn't moved yet. He stood frozen beside me, card in hand. Then, from the far end of the table, came a voice I hadn't heard all evening. Rough, deliberate. Stop. Right now. Every sound in the room vanished. The waiter stopped breathing. Calder's smile faltered. Grandfather Silas was standing, his hand braced on the edge of the table, the veins in his wrist trembling under the light. His eyes, sharp and gray, locked on Calder. I've seen enough, he said. No one spoke, not even Calder. I sat there, my card still in the waiter's hand, unsure whether this was a rescue or another lesson. My throat was dry, but I didn't speak. The silver spoon beside my plate caught the chandelier again, a tiny reflection of chaos. And for a second, I thought I heard my own pulse echoing through it. The chandelier light trembled across the room, throwing fractured reflections over every glass and plate. I didn't move. My fingers still hovered near the silver spoon, as if it might explain what just happened. Grandfather Silas's voice had cut through the air like a blade, leaving everyone else stunned and small. No one spoke for several seconds. The waiter, still holding my card, looked at Silas for permission. Leave the check, Silas said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. We'll handle this ourselves. The waiter set the folder down gently, nodded, and disappeared. The door closed, muting the restaurant's background noise. All that remained was our family, trapped together in the quiet we'd spent years avoiding. Silas's eyes moved from Calder to me. You've mistaken inheritance for entitlement. Calder gave a nervous laugh. Come on, grandfather, it was just a joke. Silas leaned forward, his hand steady despite his age. A joke tells you more about the teller than the listener. Nobody laughed this time. Even the sound of someone adjusting their chair seemed too loud. I stayed still, trying to understand whether I should feel protected or exposed. My pulse was still fast, though my face stayed neutral. The room felt smaller now, like the walls were listening. Then Silas reached for his leather briefcase, the one he always kept near his side, and placed it on the table. The soft click of its latch seemed impossibly loud. He pulled out a thin brown folder, worn at the edges, labeled in neat handwriting, Family Ledger. Calder frowned. What's that supposed to be? Silas laid the folder flat. This, he said, is a record of every loan, every favor, every dollar exchanged between us. I've kept it for years because I knew one day I'd have to remind this family of what it means to give without strings. He slid it toward me. The folder stopped just in front of my plate. I could see the ink bleeding faintly through the first page. You've given more to this family than any of them combined, Silas said. Calder's voice rose immediately. He was paying his way in. You don't get credit for that. You were never one of us. Marjorie's tone followed, soft but poisonous. We never asked for his money. He just wanted to help. I could feel something shift in my chest. Not anger, not yet, but realization. Every gesture I'd made, every check, every favor, wasn't love to them. It was proof that I knew my place. Silas straightened in his chair. When someone gives and expects nothing back, you call it love, he said. When you take and justify it, that's greed. The sentence hit the table like a hammer. No one moved. No one dared meet his eyes. I could feel everyone looking at me now, not with kindness, but with something worse. Pity. Pity feels heavier than hatred. It's what people give you when they've already decided you've lost. Part of me wanted to leave right then, but my legs didn't move. My hands rested flat on the tablecloth, feeling the pattern of the fabric under my fingertips, grounding me. Calder leaned forward, voice sharp again. So what now, Grandpa? You gonna hand him the company too? Give him Dad's chair while you're at it? Silas exhaled slowly, his shoulders sagging under years of holding this family together. You already gave him nothing but cruelty, he said. Isn't that enough inheritance for one lifetime? The words didn't just silence the room, they hollowed it out. For a moment, I saw something flicker in Calder's eyes, like a child caught lying for the first time. Then it was gone. My mother pressed her napkin into her lap, pretending to wipe something invisible. Father, she said quietly, you're tired. Let's not do this here. But Silas ignored her. He looked at me instead, not with sympathy, just honesty. The kind of look that tells you there's no more pretending left to do. I met his gaze, and something inside me cracked open. Maybe I wasn't the adopted one, I thought. Maybe they were the ones who never belonged to me. For the first time that evening, I lifted my head and looked around the table. No one could meet my eyes. Silas closed the folder gently. Enough, he said. We're done here. He pushed back his chair and stood, slower than before, but deliberate. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't wait for anyone to follow. The door closed behind him, and the silence he left behind felt colder than the winter outside. Calder broke it first, muttering, "Old man's losing it." No one replied. I reached for the folder. My name wasn't on it, but it felt like it belonged to me more than anything else on that table. I held it close, not to claim it, but to remember that for once, the truth had weight on my side. I stood, nodded at the waiter lingering by the doorway, and walked out without another word. The night air hit me hard. Chicago's wind always carried a hint of metal, like the city was reminding you that comfort is rented. I clutched the folder tighter. For the first time, I didn't feel poor. I just felt empty. The drive home that night felt endless. The streets were half asleep, washed in pale streetlight, every shadow whispering the same question. What just happened? I didn't turn on the radio. Silence was the only sound I could bear. By the time I reached my driveway, the wind had picked up, rattling the bare branches over my porch. I went inside, dropped the family ledger on the kitchen counter, and poured a glass of water I never drank. The folder sat there like it was breathing, like it could see me. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my grandfather's face, the way his voice shook but never wavered, and Calder's glare, sharp, wounded pride pretending to be power. When morning came, the house was still. Too still. The coffee pot was empty, the air smelled faintly of metal, and my phone kept buzzing on the counter. Missed calls from Mom. Dozens. I unlocked it. The family group chat was lit up. Calder, Marjorie, even a few cousins who hadn't been at the dinner. Hope you enjoyed the show, big spender. Guess the poor adopted kid got his moment, huh? Maybe next time you can buy us breakfast, too. I stared at the messages for a long time, then I set the phone face down. There was nothing left to say. I opened the front door to grab the paper, the cold air cutting across my face like a quiet punishment. On the doormat sat a thick envelope, ivory with a deep blue seal, Voss and Hart Law Offices. For a moment, I just stood there, watching the condensation gather on the wax. My stomach tightened. Whatever was inside, it wasn't routine. I took it inside, sat at the table, and slit the seal with my thumb. Inside were 2 letters, one from the law firm, one handwritten in a script I knew immediately. The lawyer's note was brief. Mr. Silas Voss requested this letter be delivered to you in the event of his hospitalization. I froze. Hospitalization. The word sank in before I could stop it. I picked up the handwritten letter. The ink looked shaky, uneven, written with effort. If you're reading this, it began, it means I've already acted to correct my mistakes. What you've given this family cannot be repaid in money, but I've tried to put things right in paper. My eyes moved slowly down the page. Silas explained that he had rewritten his will. The new document named me not as heir, but as trustee of the Voss Foundation, the fund that supported the company's charity work. A caretaker, not an owner, he'd written. Because what you've built was never meant to be owned, only protected. I sat back in the chair, the paper trembling in my hand. My throat felt tight, like every unspoken word from last night had settled there. You knew, I whispered. You saw all of it. My hand brushed against my jacket pocket. The silver spoon from the dinner was still there. I pulled it out and laid it on the table beside the letter. The metal caught the morning light, reflecting it across the paper like a slow heartbeat. Then the phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but the name on the screen made me pause. Mom. I picked up. Hello? Her voice came through thin and sharp, like it had been waiting hours to strike. Your grandfather collapsed after dinner. He's in the hospital. Are you happy now? I sat up straight. What? When? Early this morning. You did this, she hissed. You and that little stunt at the restaurant. Calder's furious. Don't come here, Rowan. You've done enough damage. I took a breath, steadying my voice. I'll be there. She started to protest, but I ended the call. The quiet afterward felt heavy, almost sacred. By the time I reached the hospital, the parking lot was half full, and local news vans were parked by the entrance. Reporters were already circling. The Voss family name was currency in Chicago. I kept my head down and pushed through the glass doors. Inside, the hallway smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. Calder was there before I even reached the waiting area. He stormed up, eyes red, hair disheveled, not from grief, but fury. "You leaked that damn video, didn't you?" he barked, grabbing my collar. I pulled free. "What video?" "Don't play dumb." His voice cracked. "Someone recorded dinner last night. The whole thing. It's online. Everyone's seen it. You humiliated us." "I didn't record anything," I said. "Then who did?" His eyes darted past me, looking for someone else to blame. I turned slightly and saw him. Miguel Harper, my late wife's brother, standing near the vending machines, camera bag slung over his shoulder, eyes averted but listening. I didn't say his name out loud. Calder followed my gaze, his jaw tightening. Before he could start again, a nurse stepped out. "Family of Silas Voss?" We both turned. "He's stable," she said softly, "but unconscious. You can see him, one at a time." Calder stormed past her without another word. I waited until the hallway cleared, then followed quietly. The room was dim, monitors beeping in a steady rhythm. Silas lay pale but peaceful, his hand resting beside the bed rail. For a moment, I just watched him breathe. Slow, measured. The same rhythm he always carried at the dinner table when things went wrong. I sat down and unfolded the letter again. The words seemed heavier now, like they knew this moment was coming. "I'll make it right," I murmured. From my pocket, I took the silver spoon and placed it gently on the tray beside him. The light from the monitor flickered across it, turning the metal almost white. Forgiveness didn't feel like surrender. It felt like release. When I stood, Calder was waiting outside the door. His voice came low, hard. "If he dies, that's on you." I met his eyes and exhaled slowly. "Then I'll carry it." I didn't look back as I walked out of the hospital. The air was heavier than it had been all day, the kind of weight that settles in your chest without asking. I drove home with the windows cracked, not for the breeze, just to remind myself I could breathe. By the time I parked in front of the house, it was nearing midnight. My porch light flickered faintly, like it hadn't been used in years, though I'd only been gone a few hours. Everything felt different now. Familiar things suddenly sharp around the edges. I walked inside and set Silas's letter on the kitchen table next to the plate of reheated chicken I'd left untouched earlier. Still warm. I hadn't eaten since the restaurant, but hunger wasn't something I felt anymore. The television was still on, low volume, static hum under a local anchor's voice. I wasn't listening, not until I caught the name. Voss Foundation under renewed scrutiny tonight after anonymous sources suggest financial irregularities within the board. No comments from the family as of this broadcast. I turned toward the screen. A blurred clip played. A man laughing, then pointing a finger. The voice was unmistakable. Calder. My pulse ticked up. I grabbed the remote and muted it. It wasn't just the dinner anymore. Someone had taken what happened behind closed doors and cracked it wide open. This wasn't just embarrassment. This was a broadcast war. I sat down, elbows on the table, eyes still on the blank screen. I thought about what Silas had written. When someone gives and expects nothing back, you call it love. I'd tried to believe in that kind of love for decades. But maybe silence wasn't love. Maybe it was just convenient for them. My phone buzzed again. One new voicemail. Timestamp. 12:07 a.m. Calder. I pressed play. His voice came through raw and thick with drink. "You think you're special now, huh? Grandpa leaves you a few papers, and suddenly you matter?" There was a pause, then more slurred anger. You've always been a stain, Rowan. You don't belong to us. Never did. Another pause. A breath. And then, I'll make sure everyone remembers that. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, trying to figure out if I was angry or afraid. Maybe both. Maybe something worse. The feeling you get when someone stops hiding their intentions. I opened my laptop. Email notifications flooded the screen. Dozens, headlines, tags, pings from journalists I didn't recognize. Voss Foundation misuse? Footage from private dinner leaks. Shocking power dynamics exposed. Attached to one was a video. I clicked. Low resolution, shaky, but clear enough to see Calder's face. Smug, leaning back in his chair, tossing his napkin aside as he said, "Since you're the generous one, Rowan." The moment hit me again like I hadn't lived it just hours ago. The spoon, the smirks, the silence that followed. Someone had recorded the whole thing. I stared at the timestamp, 9:17 p.m., minutes before Silas collapsed. That wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. I closed the laptop and rubbed my eyes. My mind kept drifting to Miguel. The way he stood in the hallway, camera bags slung over his shoulder. The way he didn't speak, didn't have to. I pulled up his number on my phone. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then I stopped. Not yet. Not until I understood why. Instead, I opened a draft email to the family's lawyer. If Calder contacts you again, let him know I'm no longer participating in his performance. I stared at the cursor. Then, slowly, I hit delete, word by word. The house creaked as the heating kicked on. I pushed back from the table and walked to the living room window, pulling the curtain aside just a few inches. Across the street, a car idled with its lights off. A dark sedan. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I reached for Silas's letter again, opening it to the final line. I read it aloud this time, softer than a whisper. Truth is patient, Rowan, but it always arrives. I didn't move. I watched as the headlights of the car blinked once, then faded out. Darkness took their place. If they want war, I murmured to no one, they'll get one. I stayed by the window for a long time after the car disappeared into the night. The silence felt like a dare. I slept in the living room, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to turn my back to anything. By morning, the silence had vanished. It started as a murmur, a low hum of voices outside, then the screech of tires, followed by the rapid-fire click of camera shutters. I pulled the curtain back and saw what looked like half the city's media camped outside my house. Tripods, boom mics, and a man from Channel 7 waving his arms at the camera crew as if he was calling plays in a football game. I didn't need to turn on the television to know what had happened, but I did anyway. Breaking this morning, the Voss family scandal continues to unfold. Rowan Kells, adopted son of late philanthropist Silas Voss, now at the center of a power struggle involving the Voss Foundation. They played the clip again. Calder's face contorted with arrogance, my quiet nod, the check, my humiliation, primetime entertainment. Then came the real punch, a pre-recorded statement from Calder's press office. Mr. Kells has long struggled with feeling excluded from the family. While we respect his grief, his behavior in recent days has become erratic and concerning. We ask for privacy as our family heals from these disruptions. I stared at the screen as if waiting for it to blink first. They'd done it again, turned truth into threat, turned me into a problem they needed to manage. A sharp knock at the front door pulled me out of it. I opened it, halfway expecting another reporter. But it was Miguel. eyes dark, hands buried deep in his jacket pockets, camera bag slung over one shoulder. He didn't wait to be asked. "I didn't leak the financials," he said quietly. "But the video? That was me." I stood in the doorway, jaw clenched. "You were sitting there like a man being eaten alive," he continued. "They needed to be seen for what they are." I let him in. We sat across from each other in the living room, the TV still murmuring behind us. "You thought this would fix something?" I asked. "No, but I thought it might stop them from doing it again." I believed him, mostly, but something didn't sit right. "I didn't ask to be a cause," I said. "I didn't ask to be your friend," Miguel replied, "but here we are." My phone buzzed. Calder. I answered. "I hope you're happy," he spat, skipping greetings. "You wanted attention. Now you've got it." "I didn't leak anything," I said calmly. "Don't lie to me. You think people care about your truth? You're a footnote in our family. A sad footnote." I stood up, walked to the window again, staring at the cameras outside. "Then we'll both find out what the world thinks of liars." Click. I hung up first. Miguel raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're not ready for politics?" I ignored him and went into the study. The family ledger was still where I left it, thick, detailed, weighty in a way money never is. As I flipped through the pages, something slipped from the back cover. A small, sealed envelope. On it, in Silas's handwriting, "To be opened when you're ready to stop apologizing." I sat. I opened it. Just one sentence. "The louder they shout, the more truth they fear." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Not anger, not sadness, just stillness. That sentence, it steadied me more than any defense ever could. I returned to the living room. Miguel hadn't moved. He looked at me like he was waiting for permission to keep caring. "I'll do an interview," I said. His eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "One condition. I'm not here to accuse anyone. I'm not here to scream. Just facts." He nodded. "We can keep it simple." And we did. We filmed in my kitchen. Just me, sitting at the table, looking into the camera like I was talking to someone I used to know. "I've never wanted anything from the Voss name," I said, "but when a family turns silence into currency, someone eventually has to speak." That line, it was trending before the interview even ended. Older viewers flooded the comment sections. People who'd lost inheritance fights, who'd been erased from family photos, who knew what it felt like to be useful but never loved. Miguel cut the camera. "You just turned the tide," he said. I didn't answer. My phone vibrated again. Unknown number. One new message. I opened it. Just one sentence. "You shouldn't have spoken. Some truths die for a reason." Below it, a photo. My grandfather's office, ransacked. Papers everywhere. The safe door hanging open like a broken jaw. I stared at the screen, heart steady. Then I whispered, "You just told me where to look." The photo burned in my mind long after I set the phone down. My grandfather's office, torn apart, drawers overturned, papers shredded, the safe door cracked open like a wound. Whoever had done it hadn't come for chaos. They'd come for something specific. By the time the sun rose, I was already on the road. The city still wore its morning fog like a bruise, gray and heavy. The downtown traffic crawled, but I barely noticed. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, knuckles pale. When I reached the Voss Foundation, yellow police tape cut across the glass doors. Reporters hovered like vultures, murmuring into microphones, pretending to whisper tragedy, but hungry for scandal. I pushed through them, flashing the security badge I still had from the board meetings months ago. Inside, it looked like a storm had been locked in overnight. The air smelled of dust and stale perfume. Someone's cologne still clinging to the chaos. Glass crunched under my shoes as I walked past shattered picture frames. The photographs were all of Calder, ribbon cuttings, galas, the man posing like he owned generosity. My own face wasn't in any of them. A uniformed officer glanced up from the mess. "You're that guy from the news?" he said, half whisper, half accusation. "I'm the trustee," I replied, though the word tasted foreign. He led me toward the office. The safe stood open, a hollow black rectangle against the paneled wall. Inside, nothing, not even dust. "The thief knew what to look for," the detective said, stepping beside me. "They didn't take computers or art or cash, just the contents of this safe." I stared at the empty space, remembering Silas's words. What I couldn't protect in life, I've hidden in truth. "What was kept here?" the detective asked. "Documents," I said. "The original trust for the foundation, maybe more." His expression hardened. "Then this wasn't a robbery. It's a message." The words echoed in the still air. Before I could answer, the doors burst open. Calder's voice filled the hallway like an alarm. "Well, isn't this perfect?" He strode in, flanked by his attorney and a PR rep who already looked exhausted. "The morning after you air your little sob story, the place gets robbed. You couldn't make this up." "I didn't break in, Calder." "No?" He gestured around the wreckage. "You're the one who had the keys. You're the one Grandpa trusted with his papers." "Trusted," I repeated. "You remember what that feels like?" His attorney put a hand on Calder's arm, but he shook it off. "You think I don't see what you're doing? You're trying to rewrite history, to make yourself the hero of a story you were lucky to even be in." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You're the only one who knew the safe code, so tell me, how does that rewrite go?" The detective's gaze flicked between us, his hand resting on his notepad, but not writing a word. For a second, I thought Calder might swing at me. His jaw locked, then he turned sharply toward the door. "This isn't over!" He left a trail of expensive cologne and panic behind him. Once they were gone, the detective sighed. "We'll pull the security footage. Maybe it'll give us something." It did, just not what anyone expected. An hour later, my phone buzzed. "Miguel." "You need to see something," he said, his voice low. "Check your email." The attachment was a still frame from the security camera. A figure entering the building at 11:47 p.m. Broad shoulders, short hair, expensive coat. It looked like Calder, but the timestamp didn't make sense. Calder had been live on television then, ranting about betrayal and family unity in a pre-dawn interview. Someone was playing a deeper game. I zoomed in on the grainy image, the shape of the man's face, almost but not quite right. A frame job, perfect and deliberate. I called Miguel back. "Where did you get this?" "I have contacts at the station. They leaked it before the police could lock it down. Rowan, whoever broke in, wasn't there to steal money. They were looking for leverage." I looked around the room again. The shredded papers, the empty frames, the overturned lamp that still flickered on and off. Every piece of destruction felt intentional, staged. "Why send the photo to me?" I asked. "Because," Miguel said quietly, "they want you to react." After the call ended, I sat alone in my grandfather's office. Outside, the city kept moving, taxis honking, buses groaning. But in here, time had slowed to a crawl. My thoughts circled back to Silas's final line. Truth is patient, but it always arrives. Maybe this was it arriving, cracked open, messy, impossible to control. I opened my laptop, transferred the footage, and hovered over the send button on a new email addressed to the detective. My finger paused. If I sent it, the investigation would explode. The Voss name would sink with it. My family, even what was left of it, would be done. But silence had cost me too much already. No more silence, I said aloud. Instead of sending it to the police, I forwarded the footage to a private investigator I'd worked with years ago. Someone who didn't owe the Voss family anything. Someone who knew how to find truth quietly. When the file finished uploading, I closed the laptop and exhaled. They wanted war in silence, I whispered. I'll give them truth in daylight. The room felt lighter for the first time in days. But then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You have no idea what he left behind. I stared at the message until the words blurred, the chill from them creeping under my skin. Whatever Silas had hidden, whatever truth was still buried, it hadn't surfaced yet. And when it did, it wouldn't come quietly. I didn't leave Derek Lang's office until the streetlights had begun casting long shadows across the sidewalks. The message still sat in my pocket. You have no idea what he left behind. I thought it was a threat. But now, holding this folder in my hands, I realized it was a warning. The place didn't look like much. Just a second-floor walk-up above a used furniture store on the edge of River North. But the man inside it carried the weight of every truth I didn't want to hear. Derek Lang was quiet when I arrived. Not cold, just seasoned. Like a man who'd spent his life watching others lie to themselves. He motioned for me to sit, and I did, on a chair that creaked with age and truth. I pulled the records you asked for, he said, voice calm, eyes unreadable. But there's something else. Something I think you need to see before we talk next steps. He reached under the desk and slid a manila folder across to me. On top, a scanned image of a birth certificate. My name, Rowan Joseph Kells. But the birth date was wrong. A full year off. I looked up. This isn't me. It is, he replied, if you were never supposed to exist on paper. The room didn't move, but my stomach did. Derek leaned forward, fingers laced. The file was tucked in among the documents pulled from the Voss Foundation break-in. It was the only one marked private for Silas only. Inside the folder was a trail of paper I wasn't ready for. Legal filings, letters, and one thing that made my chest go hollow. A photo of a baby boy being held in a hospital room. Silas stood in the foreground, a soft smile on his face, and in the background, Marjorie, not young, not confused, but staring dead at the camera, expression hard as granite. My breath caught. She knew, I whispered. Derek nodded slowly. According to these, he tapped the documents, you weren't adopted from a stranger. You were his, Silas's son, born from an affair years before he took you in. The adoption, fabricated, made to look clean. Everything inside me slowed to a crawl. The unsigned birthday cards, the odd glances, the way Silas always hesitated before introducing me at formal events. This is my grandson. I thought it was formality, but now it felt like theater. I never wanted to be special, I muttered, voice hollow. I just wanted to be seen. Derek didn't say anything. He knew this wasn't a moment for advice, just space. I sifted through the folder again. There was a notarized letter dated 2 decades back. It referenced a trust Silas intended to update, naming Rowan Kells, son by blood, protected by secrecy. And then it hit me. Calder always knew. His hatred wasn't born of misunderstanding. It was born of threat. He wasn't just angry at me for being adopted. He was afraid of me, of what my existence meant for the Voss name. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. All those years I thought I was the outsider, I said. Turns out I was the secret they built the house around. Derek slid over one last envelope. You'll want to see this too. Inside was a photo I'd never seen. The same hospital room, same baby. But in this one, Silas was holding me in one arm and reaching towards someone just out of frame, a woman. Only part of her face was visible, my mother, and scrawled on the back in Silas's handwriting, I did this to protect you both. The grief didn't come as a wave. It came as a slow, rising tide. No tears, just wait. He hadn't protected me. He'd erased me. I never had a chance, I said, almost to myself. Derek finally spoke. If you go public with this, you'll burn what's left of that family name to the ground. Silas's legacy, the foundation, everything. I stared at the photo. Silas, younger, proud. A moment captured before the lie began. Then I said quietly, he destroyed it the moment he made me a ghost. I rose from the chair, folder in hand. The weight of paper was nothing compared to the clarity that had settled inside me. On my way out, Derek called after me. Be careful, they've hidden this for a reason. Outside, the air had cooled. The city buzzed around me, but it all felt distant. I walked 3 blocks without hearing a sound. Just footsteps and memory. Back at my front door, I paused. The porch light was still on, casting a faint orange glow over the steps. I stood there, thumbing the edge of the photograph, Silas, me, and the truth we both carried. Then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. A familiar voice cut through the dark. You were supposed to stay buried. Marjorie. Her voice trembled, but her tone was as sharp as I'd ever known it. And this time, I didn't flinch. Marjorie stood just beyond the porch light, soaked through, strands of wet gray hair clinging to her cheeks. Her breath came fast, not from exertion, but from restraint. She didn't look like the woman I remembered from childhood. Perfectly dressed, spine straight like a statue. Tonight, her eyes were swollen, her coat clung to her, and for the first time in my life, she looked small. We need to talk, she said. Not a request, an expectation. A habit she'd never had to unlearn. I stepped aside without saying a word. The silence hung heavy between us as she entered. She looked around, eyes quickly catching on the photo still lying on the table. Her face froze. I closed the door behind her with a soft click. She moved toward the table but didn't sit. Just stood staring at that image of Silas, younger, softer, holding me, the baby neither of us was ever supposed to mention. I watched her. How long have you known? I asked, my voice quiet. Even. Not angry, not yet. And Marjorie didn't look at me. Since before you could walk. She finally sat down, slowly, like her knees had turned to paper. Her handbag slipped from her fingers and fell open at her feet. A folded photo peeked out. The same one I had. She must have carried it for years. He made me swear to protect you, she said, staring at her hands. But he never meant for you to inherit anything. You weren't supposed to have a name. I stayed standing. No, I said calmly. He meant for me to stay invisible. Her lips pressed together, trembling slightly. It wasn't my choice. Wasn't it? I interrupted. Every time you looked at me, You made a choice. Her eyes flashed, but it wasn't fire. It was fear. Do you think this family would have survived if the world had known? You were his mistake, Rowan. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. No, I said. I was his second chance. The words stopped her cold. She blinked as if she hadn't expected them. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe she thought I'd rage or crumble like I did as a boy. But not tonight. She looked down. Her fingers fumbled at her wrist as though looking for something to hold. I gave my life to this family, she whispered. And he gave you everything. No, I said again, more softly this time. He gave me silence. You enforced it. I walked to the table, picked up the folded letter, and handed it to her. She took it like it burned her. You should read it. She hesitated, then unfolded the paper and read aloud, her voice cracking as she reached the middle. To the one who carries my name in silence, I wronged you, but I believed you'd grow strong enough to forgive me. Her voice caught. She folded the letter and placed it in her lap, staring at nothing. He told me to destroy that letter, she said, but I couldn't. Because part of you wanted me to find it, I said. She nodded slowly. A tear fell, unnoticed by her but not by me. I hated you, she whispered, because you were proof that he loved someone else more. She looked at me, finally. Really looked. I wasn't evil, Rowan, she said. I was scared. I didn't reply. I just watched the way her shoulders curled inward, the way her hands twisted in her lap like they were still trying to strangle a truth she'd buried for too long. The room went still. Even the rain against the windows seemed to quiet. Her eyes drifted toward the mantel. That spoon, she said softly, almost reverently. He gave that to me once, before Calder was born. I walked over, lifted the silver piece from the stand, turned it over in my hand. Now it belongs to the truth. She nodded, more to herself than to me. Then she stood, slowly, carefully, like the years had finally caught up with her. What will you do? She asked. I looked at her without hesitation. What he couldn't. Tell the truth. She flinched this time, the old strength gone. You'll destroy everything. Then maybe it wasn't worth saving. She didn't argue. She just walked toward the door, pausing for a second at the threshold. You look like him when you're angry, she said. I didn't respond. She left. The rain had eased into a mist by the time she stepped off the porch. I stood in the doorway and watched her walk away, shrinking into the night like a shadow returning to the dark. I closed the door. The house was quiet again. Still. Then my phone rang. Mr. Kells? The voice on the other end was calm but firm. This is St. Jude's Hospital. Your grandfather's condition has changed. You should come now. I stood there, the photo still in my hand. And for a moment I swore I heard him calling my name, not as a secret, but as a son. I drove through the sleeping city, streets slick with rain and fog clinging low like the hush after a storm. The hospital sat quiet under flickering lights, a place that felt both too sterile and too sacred for the weight I carried in my chest. When I reached the third floor, the nurse waiting outside Silas's room gave me a nod. Soft, sympathetic, but not surprised. He passed a few minutes ago, she said gently. He held on longer than we expected. She placed something in my hand, a sealed envelope. My name was written in his unmistakable handwriting. Not Rowan Kells, Rowan Voss. I didn't cry, not right then. Just stood still as the machines lay silent beyond the glass. He was gone. But in his final moment, He'd given me something I never had. My name. I stepped inside. The room smelled of antiseptic and fading breath. Silas lay still, his face almost peaceful. I pulled the chair closer and sat down slowly, letting the letter rest in my lap until my fingers felt steady enough to open it. His handwriting shook, but the words were clear. My son, I built an empire to be remembered, and in the process, I erased the only thing worth remembering, you. When I called you grandson, I was protecting my name. When you stayed silent, you were protecting my soul. I failed you in every way a father can fail a son. I asked you to be invisible, because I was too afraid of the light. Do not forgive me for what I've done. Forgive me for what I couldn't. I read the words 3 times before folding them carefully and slipping them into my coat pocket. Then I reached in and took out the silver spoon, the one from the mantel, the one she said he gave her, the one that always reminded me I didn't belong. I placed it on the blanket beside him. This time, I whispered, voice breaking, you eat first. I sat with him a while longer, the early hours creeping past in silence, the kind that felt earned, not empty. And when I finally stood, I wasn't weighed down. I was lighter, still sad, still grieving. But something had shifted. Outside the hospital, I saw the press gathered again. A new angle, a new spin. They wanted quotes, reactions, blood. I didn't give it to them. Instead, I turned away. Not toward the street, not toward the cameras, back inside, back to the man's office, the one room he'd kept locked tighter than his past. The hidden drawer wasn't hard to find anymore. Inside was a folder, unmarked, but I knew. The real trust. No signatures missing, no pages torn out. And this one didn't name Calder, or me, or anyone in the family. Every cent, the buildings, the holdings, the accounts, all marked to be transferred to a newly registered entity, the Voss Community Foundation. No heirs, no favorites, just service. The final act of a man trying to make right what he'd buried for too long. At sunrise, the city glowed soft and gold as I stepped outside the Voss estate for the last time. I walked across the lawn alone, the letter in one pocket, the trust in the other. Down in the records room of the Foundation's archive, I placed both inside a sealed envelope and marked it, to be opened only by the truth. Then I signed the final document, Rowan Silas Voss, Executor. As I set the pen down, I let myself breathe, not deeply, just fully. A few weeks passed. The dedication ceremony wasn't grand. There were no orchestras, no champagne, no Voss family press releases, just a modest sign. The Silas and Rowan Foundation for Children Without Names. Miguel filmed the whole thing. He stayed quiet behind the camera but gave me a nod when it ended. The kind of nod that meant you did it. Marjorie came. She didn't speak to me. She didn't have to. Her eyes were softer now, worn but peaceful. We shared a glance. A fragile kind of truce neither of us would ever put into words. Calder didn't show. I wasn't surprised. Some people never stop running from the truth. Others learn to carry it. As the guests trickled out and the sky dipped into early dusk, I found myself standing in front of Miguel's camera one last time. I looked straight into the lens and said, "Make sure they hear it right this time." Miguel didn't even blink. "They will." And as the shutter clicked off and the frame faded to black, I knew this much. For the first time, I wasn't the one left out of the story. I was the story.